Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day 516, 516. Friday, August 10th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a hell of a week, hasn't it? I mean, we've had some unbelievable revelations this week, and it just seems like, as I said in a video a couple of weeks ago, the way that these things typically work out is at first they move very, very slowly and then very, very quickly. That's just the nature of how these things unwind. And they don't really start to hit critical mass until the first indictments or fear of the first indictments come down. And at that point, everyone is forced to make a decision. It's like, okay, I heard someone is under indictment or is going to be indicted. They're talking about indictments. People start getting nervous. And then, because what you have in a criminal conspiracy like this is the criminal conspirators try to stick together, and cover each other's back. And they stick together until the first indictment comes down, and then it's every man for himself. And when we get to that point, that's where we're going to see the dominoes just go very, very, very quickly. So when we get there, I don't know. Whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year and a half, I don't know. We're getting some indications, though, that it's getting closer, much closer. And so we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through the video today, based on a couple things we got from Giuliani and from Trump himself. So that's what the focus is right now, to be very dialed in to these events as they're taking place. And of course I put them in my timeline and follow them, try to connect the dots, show how what we learned today relates to everything else that we know up to this point. Sometimes it confirms what we knew. Sometimes it changes our opinion about what we thought we knew. But we just keep drilling down on it every day. And eventually, it's all going to pan itself out, as I have been saying for a very long time now. So, let's get to some news items. Paul, big ears, Eddie Munster Ryan. He needs to go, and he needs to go now. He's playing some games. Not many people know about it. Not many people are covering it. But of course, I don't know how many of you heard about the article that he wrote in his farewell article that he wrote in the New York Times, where he essentially says that he saved the country from Trump by blocking Trump from doing things he would like to do, such as immigration and other things like that. So Paul Ryan needs to go, and what we are learning now is that behind the scenes, because keep in mind, he's still the Speaker of the House, which means he controls where a lot of the money goes, to what candidates get money. And so we're learning that Paul Ryan is shifting a lot of money to anti-Trump type Republicans, Republicans who would resist Trump. Now, despite that, Trump's picks went 5 for 5 this past Tuesday night. But Paul Ryan is out there channeling money into people who are against Trump. He's channeling money into the establishment candidates, just as you would expect he would. And I know there's a pretty good rule about, it's not a law, but it's a pretty much of a standing rule that you let the speaker finish out his term, and then after the midterms, he goes away, and you elect a new speaker. But under the circumstances, with the critical election coming up, and Paul Ryan working against the leader of the party, that would be President Trump, and the majority of the people around the country who support Trump, and he is carrying the Republican Party on his back right now with about 30 some odd members of the Freedom Caucus, Paul Ryan is doing nothing but obstructing. And so I don't know how many votes that they could get, but I would like to see them try, and this may be happening behind the scenes, I don't know. But what I would like to see them do, and it's hard to do during the month of August because a lot of these guys are back in their districts on vacation. There are other places, they're not there in Congress. So it's tough to do, but I would certainly love to see them get rid of Ryan before the midterms, as soon as possible. They could have a vote. They could vote him out of his speakership, and they could vote in someone else. Hopefully, and preferably, Jim Jordan. Just want you to know what's going on with Paul Big Ears, Eddie Munster Ryan. He is working behind the scenes literally to help the Democrats. Because anti-Trump Republicans, he knows, will not get a big turnout. And turnouts are really important in midterms. So Paul Ryan, I guess, thinks by putting money, depriving money of candidates who are running on Trump's agenda, funneling that money to people who are opposed to Trump's agenda, that he can get enough of these anti-Trump Republicans that they will not energize or excite the base, and they simply won't come out, in which case they would lose to the Democrat. So this is just a technique that Paul Ryan is using to make sure that the Republicans lose the House. That's what he's really trying to do. It's disturbing, it's disgusting, and Paul Big Ears Ryan should be admonished for it publicly by other Republicans. And they should have a vote. They should vote him out now. Replace the speaker now. You don't have to wait. Do it now. That's my suggestion. Another very important detail that has come from, I believe this was from the Byron York piece that he wrote. And remember, we had 3 separate leaks on these Bruce Orr 302s. First, we get John Solomon. He gets a section of some of these 302s leaked to him. He writes a story. The very next day, Sarah Carter gets a section of 302s leaked to her. She writes the story. And then the day after, in fact, I think it was the same day. The second day, it was both Sarah Carter and Byron York both get 302 leaks, both of them separate types of things. So they all 3 didn't get the same thing. They all 3 got 302 leaks, Bruce Orr 302 leaks, but they were all slightly different. But they all dealt with similar things. So something that I think I got from the Byron York piece that I didn't get time to get to yesterday is this it was just a couple of sentences. And I think his name was only mentioned once. I'm talking about Uncle Bob the Executioner, Bob Mueller. But in this particular text, Steele is essentially considering Mueller as part of the team. So Steele is having this text with Bruce Orr, and Steele is showing his frustration that it was taking so long to get himself reapproved or back into the mix with the FBI. Because the FBI had said, okay, sorry, Chris, you're out. And so then he began immediately working with Bruce Orr or anyone else so that he could get back in the game. And so they're having this conversation, and Steele is frustrated and asking Bruce Orr to try to get some information to tell him what's taking so long for him to get... Steele wants to know from Bruce Orr what's taking so long for him, Steele, to get back in the good graces of the FBI so that he can continue, supplying them with information. And he refers to Bob Mueller. And he's talking about the fact that, essentially what he's saying is that he knows that that Mueller is part of this effort to be able to recapture Steele as a source. And that essentially Mueller is on the team. He's part of the same team that Steele's playing for, and that Orr is playing for, and that Comey was playing for, and all the rest. In other words, this one text makes it perfectly clear from this text between Steele and Bruce Orr that Steele certainly considers Uncle Bob the Executioner, Bob Mueller, considers him to be part of the team. This will be very, very important. It's one of these texts that no one's really focusing very hard on right now because there's not a whole lot of other context and it's not exactly where everyone is right now. But as we move farther down the road, towards the very end of the road, when we get toward the end of the road, past the Mueller investigation, it's going to become obvious that Uncle Bob the Executioner wasn't just brought in out of left field, called in out of the bullpen to come in and close out the game, but he was actually in the game all along. And when he came in with a clear understanding that he had a mandate to continue what was already underway, which was to take over the Crossfire Hurricane, which was, of course, the counterintelligence operation against Trump to try to destroy Trump, to destroy his presidency. His candidacy at that time and later his presidency. So Uncle Bob was brought in to continue the coup, is basically what it boils down to. And certainly we can see here from Steele that Steele considered him an asset and part of the team. this is not something that a lot of people are going to focus on right now. But down the road, that little text right there, and there could be more that implicate Mueller, are going to create a lot of problems for Uncle Bob the Executioner. And in the end, I think that he and his Hillary donor posse could also find themselves facing possible criminal charges for being a part of the coup. We'll see when we get there. Now, Gordon, yesterday in the comments section, I was talking about the Trump Tower meeting, and so in reference to the Trump Tower meeting, Gordon asked a couple questions, and I think in his case they were rhetorical, because I think Gordon knows, the dates that he was asking about. But he said, what about the date of Goldstone's email to Trump Jr.? What about the time period where McCain got the classified documents from the FBI? And that's referring to the story I was telling you that we had just learned that McCain had been given information about various Russians who were under the watchful eye of the intelligence community and the FBI. He was given this list of names, and then he went and passed it to Confusion GPS, and two of the people on that list were, of course, Oleg Deripaska and Maria Veselnitskaya. He also asked, when did Natalia Veselnitskaya get her visa? So he's asking three questions that really revolve around the question of what Senator McCain, Senator Magoo, what his role was in the Trump Tower setup. So here's the answer to your questions, Gordon. I think you know, but for those of you in the comment section who read this and are not sure, let me give you those dates, and I think you'll see where Gordon, what he was pointing to at this point. So the date of the Rob Goldstone email to Trump Jr. was June the 3rd of 2016 at 10:36 a.m. June the 3rd, 2016. Now, the date when McCain had received this intelligence information about these Russians who are being watched or what have you is not exactly known, the exact date. And we don't really know the exact date that he passed that information on. But we do know of the meetings, the two meetings that he attended, where it's likely in one of these two meetings that information would have been passed along to Confusion GPS. And that would have been a meeting that he attended in March of 2016 and April 2016. So very early on. So, as Gordon is, I think, pointing out here, getting those names into the hands of Confusion GPS was helpful to them to help them put together their plot for the Trump Tower setup. But the date that the email from Goldstone actually hit Trump Jr. is the exact same date that Veselnitskaya was approved for her visa. Exact same day, June the 3rd, 2016. So McCain is briefed by probably Brennan or someone in the intelligence agency. He's given a list of names of Russians that are people they're watching. He passes this along to Confusion GPS sometime around March or April in one of two meetings we know he attended. And then on June the 3rd, Goldstone sends the email, and Natalia Veselnitskaya gets her visa approved. So yes, very interesting dates, and you can see how they all kind of played in. And it just shows more evidence, in fact, that the Trump Tower meeting was clearly a setup. I mean, it was obvious to me shortly after it happened. I've known it for over a year, but this is just more evidence, as you can see, how things led up and led to the Trump Tower meeting. Now, I keep saying we got to trust Trump. He knows what's going on, and I'm telling you, he's going to get these people. He's not going to let this slide. He's got his own time frame. We don't know what that is, okay? But you can just tell the way he's acting. He's not nervous at all. He's not worried at all. He knows that he can drop this thing anytime he wants to. So he's going to do it on his own time and on his own terms. And we got two comments from Rudy Giuliani yesterday and one tweet from Trump. First, it was Giuliani going on Fox in the morning. Then Trump sends out a tweet. Then Giuliani is back on Fox later and comments again. So let's go through these things, and I think it's pretty clear that what the signal that Trump and Giuliani are sending is that be patient, be patient. We know you're frustrated, but trust us. We got a plan. We're taking these people down. Just be patient. So here's what Giuliani told Fox. He said that the Mueller witch hunt is about to blow up in the faces of the deep state plotters. That's a very bold statement to make. Very bold statement. When you know Uncle Bob's trying to get the goods on your guy, to come out and make a statement like that, it's a very challenging, threatening statement. He says the Mueller witch hunt is about to blow up in the faces of the deep state plotters. How would he know that? Well, he's the president's attorney. Then Trump comes out and tweets, "This is an illegally brought, rigged witch hunt run by people who are totally corrupt and are conflicted. It was started and paid for by Crooked Hillary and the Democrats, phony dossier, FISA disgrace, and so many lying and dishonest people already fired. 17 angry Dems, ? Stay tuned." That's what Trump tweeted. Stay tuned. Then Rudy follows up and says, "This case is going to fizzle. It's going to blow up on them. There's a lot more to what they did that nobody knows about yet." So there's some very key tweets between Giuliani and Trump basically telling us, be patient, we know what's going on, you know what's going on, and all in good time, it's all going to come out. And what's going to come out is more than you guys even know, which tells us they know a lot more than we do. From the Gateway Pundit, we have Uncle Bob, the executioner's prosecutors have now filed a complaint against Judge Ellis. Uncle Bob's Hillary donor posse have filed a formal complaint against Judge Ellis, claiming that he violated protocol by unfairly blasting the prosecutors over a witness, and complaining that prosecutors were being unfairly called out in front of the jury. Well, yeah, I mean, he told him on day one exactly what they were running there in his courtroom, and he doesn't like it. And yes, he is calling them out. He's speeding them up. He's not letting them run the game. He's kind of forcing them to be legit, and they are not legit, and therefore will be exposed and will likely cost them this case. So, yeah, my guess is that Judge Ellis is not going to be very happy that they filed a complaint against him. So we'll see how he responds to that. My guess is not very well. Obviously, he doesn't like these guys, right? Next, we have from TruthFeed, John Solomon. Recent documents that Solomon has received leave no doubt that the Obama administration was trying to take over the investigation, that being the Russia investigation. And this is according to Solomon. And there's no doubt that the investigation was political. Sure. I mean, first they said that there was none of this stuff going on. Then they had, when the evidence came out, they had to admit it was going on. But they said it wasn't political. But now we know from all the information we've seen, it was extremely political. It's clear to John Solomon, and he's not even what you would consider a hardcore right-winger, or probably not even a big huge Trump fan. He just kind of calls him as he sees him. He's a good journalist, a good reporter. I mean, if something negative came out on Trump, he would report on that too. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, we knew there's been multiple texts and references. In fact, we have the one text from Lisa Page to Peter Spencer-Strokenes. Obama wants to know everything we're doing, getting ready to go to a meeting at the White House, and Obama wants to know everything that we're doing. And then you could tell that in conversations after that between Lisa Page and Peter Spencer-Strokenes, they were getting kind of upset because they thought that the White House was trying to take away their investigation. And so they started trying to protect it. It's exactly what was going on. It's clear to John Solomon, it's clear to me, and I'm sure it's clear to many of you. Pretty soon it will be clear to the whole world. Well, it looks like Ocasio Marty Feldman Eyes Cortez now wants to include funeral expenses into health care because of people who die because they can't afford access to health care. Oh my. Yeah, I believe you're talking about $3.7 trillion a year to do the Cortez plan, and now she wants to add funeral expenses to that. Again, I mean, she's not very smart. I mean, that's the I don't know the way to put it. She's a dummy. I mean, she means well. She's probably a nice person, but she's nuts. She swallowed the crazy pill. She's got TDS. And, of course, she can't be very happy that a lot of the candidates, almost all the candidates that she endorsed, got beaten badly by corporate Democrats. Because the average Democrat across the country understands that she's nuts and not very smart. Unbelievable. Well, it looks like Joe Manchin and Joe Donnelly are both saying that they will support border wall funding. They're also both saying that they're willing to interview with Kavanaugh and give him a fair shot. So clearly, Cucky Chuck Schumer has lost control of the process there. He was supposed to be holding the line. No votes for any walls. No votes for Judge Kavanaugh. It looks like that's all falling apart for Chuck the Cuck, because it looks like Manchin and Donnelly are the first two to go weak in the knees, and there will be more, especially as we get closer to November elections. Here you go. Here's a very interesting story that I'm sure that you guys will really like. One that I really haven't figured out exactly what it means, but it certainly was reported in the True Pundit. A Boeing 757, chartered by the Department of Justice and the FBI, landed in Little Rock, Arkansas, loaded with boxes and documents. In other words, evidence. The FBI field office in Little Rock, Arkansas, was supposed to be conducting the investigation into the Clinton Foundation. But FBI insiders have complained that there is a lack of progress on the investigation, and it's not an accident. The FBI agent in charge in Little Rock is Diane Upchurch. Before taking on the Clinton Foundation investigation, Upchurch was a lieutenant of Andrew McCabe in D.C. She was appointed to take over this mission by James Comey to conduct the investigation. McCabe was appointed by Mueller, of course, in 2012. So there you see this chain of command with Comey and Mueller and McCabe and Diane Upchurch falling right underneath of them, and that's the person Comey put in charge of investigating the rotten Reverend Clinton in Little Rock, a case which a lot of FBI agents say is going nowhere on purpose, what they call going sideways, and for some strange reason, a 757 landed on the tarmac there in Little Rock, Arkansas. They know that it was loaded down with boxes and documents by the DOJ and FBI. So your guess is as good as mine as to why they've delivered a lot of evidence in a 757 to Little Rock, Arkansas from the DOJ and the FBI. The rotten Reverend Clinton got her paws into everything, does she not? Fighting for her survival. She knows the noose is closing in. It's just a matter of time before we get that direct link to the rotten Reverend Clinton. That'll happen when we get inside the White House with Obama and Jarrett. Then you'll get the direct connection to Clinton. We already have somewhat of a direct connection because of Cody Shearer and Sidney Blumenthal passing the dossier back and forth with Christopher Steele and Victoria Nuland and company. Those are Hillary apparatchiks. The New York Art Gallery has an exhibit which depicts Saggy Daniels as the Virgin Mary. Oh, you gotta be kidding. Well, actually, it's the New York Art Gallery. No, I'm not surprised and shouldn't be laughing at all that the New York Art Gallery would have an exhibit which would depict Saggy Daniels as the Virgin Mary. There is not a single crack or crevice in the body of Saggy Daniels that is virgin of anything. Not a virgin crack or crevice in Saggy Daniels' entire body, I can assure you that. They have all been explored thoroughly. Now, it looks like Judicial Watch has sued the DOJ for communications between Bruce Orr, Christopher Steele, and Confusion GPS. That's good. That's very, very good. But while you're at it, you might also want to get the communications between Mueller and Comey, McCabe, and Rodenstein in the period of January through June of 2017. That would also be some good reading, I'm sure. And of course, any communications between the rotten Reverend Clinton and any of the above-mentioned perpetrators. But good work, Judicial Watch. Keep digging. Now, the reason that they sued is because they asked for this material back in May. They've never received it. So now they're going to go ahead and file the lawsuit. And then in 6 months or however long, they'll eventually get some of it, probably heavily redacted. So, who first came up with the term insurance policy against Trump? Do you remember? Who was it that first came up with the term insurance policy as it relates to Donald Trump? Well, it happened to be the good friend of J. Edgar Comey, former director of the Federal Bureau of Insubordination. One of his closest friends, Benjamin Witz. He used the term in an article he wrote on the Lawfare blog in October of 2016. And he was talking about all the ways and all the things that they could do to stop Trump. And if he won the election, the things that they could do to destroy Trump. He wrote openly about this on lawfareblog.com, or maybe .org, back in October of 2016, one of James Comey's closest friends. We also know all about Daniel Richman, who Comey was also one of Comey's close friends, who he leaked those notes to, the Comey notes, 2 of them classified. And then, of course, he made Mr. Richman, he gave him a special status at the FBI, which allowed him to access confidential information. And we know now that the reason he did that was to use Daniel Richman to make sure that he could get any information he needed. And Comey wanted to have Richman out there working the media, taking this information he was getting illegally and working the media to continue the anti-Trump narrative. So here you have the director of the FBI, who essentially works for Trump, right? Who's got 2 of his closest friends actively participating in the media part of the coup, even before Trump was elected president. Long before any of the things happened that Comey talked about his meetings with Trump and having this uneasy feeling, and Trump wears his tie too long, and he's got orange skin or whatever, all these things. Long before that, Comey was already working with his close friends Daniel Richman and Benjamin Witz to do damage to Trump, first as a candidate and later as president. So Judicial Watch, while you're looking for communications between Orr, Steele, Fusion GPS, I strongly suggest that somebody ought to be looking at the communications, as I said, between Comey, Mueller, and Rodenstein, but also the communications between Daniel Richman, Benjamin Witz, and James Comey. There is a lot to be learned there, because these guys are also connected. And I think that they may be responsible for leaks, which is a major issue because Comey was put in charge of finding the leakers. But how ironic would it be to find out that one of the main leakers was his good friend Daniel Richman, who he made essentially a special government employee and gave him access to classified information. And a lot of people have speculated that he may have been one of those people accessing the NSA database via the FBI systems. So I think that that's two more people that we need to focus in on a little bit more. So anyway, it has been a very, very big week. Just so much information to process through. You know, I mean, I put it in my timeline, so yeah, feel free to check out my timeline. If a lot of times these facts, I mean, it's kind of hard sometimes when you're watching somebody just in a video just rattle off all this information, and sometimes it's a little easier to comprehend. So just about all the stuff that's pertaining to Spygate or TowerGate or whatever you want to call it goes into my timeline, and of course I put the link for my timeline on every video, so you can just click on it. So if it's a little cloudy in your head, or this past week with having so many different sort of bombshells dropping, I recommend, if it's still a little cloudy in your head, to, you know, just click on my TowerGate blog and scroll down maybe to the very bottom, you know, and then maybe work yourself up to the top until you're back into the territory where, okay, now I remember all this and this and this. But just I myself mentioned this because I was just looking at the last like 2 to 3 weeks of things that I've added to my timeline the last 2 or 3 weeks, and it's extraordinary the real major bombshells that have come out in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So it's all starting to come out. Well, it's not just starting to come out; it's been coming out, and there's a lot more to come. But it's just, you know, it's not like we're surprised because we've known all this for so long. We're so far ahead of the game. I mean, everything that we're seeing evidence of today is things we were talking about that we believed to be true a year ago. So all we're really doing now is getting the evidence and the proof of what we've known. A lot of it we were pretty sure of, and some of it we were, you know, thought may be true, but we weren't really sure. But I think that's pretty important also, where Giuliani said today that there's a lot more than we even know. And I don't know what he's pointing to with that, because we know a lot of things here on TowerGate. We've been all over this thing for a long time. So anyway, I just think it's pretty interesting where we are right now. We're really at that point where there's so much information out there right now that if you were to appoint a special counsel, you know, you could literally, a special counsel, so much of his work would already be done. It's all laid out. It's not like he'd be beginning an investigation. There is so much there that all we have to do is just start confirming all the things that have already been discovered by various people, journalists or whatever, these committees that are investigating and things and such. And another thing that a lot of people are looking at and suspecting that maybe there's some people like Bruce Orr or Lisa Page or others who have maybe already cut deals and things like that. Now, I don't think there's been any deals cut because there's nobody to cut a deal with. There is no special counsel. There's no presidential commission. The Inspector General is not in the position to grant that kind of thing. The Attorney General, of course, is asleep at the switch. He doesn't even know what's going on. That's Sessions. And, of course, Rodenstein is totally corrupt and playing for the other team. So if you wanted a deal, who the hell would you go to? Rodenstein ain't going to give you a deal. He's probably going to pass your name over to the rotten Reverend Clinton, let him know that you got a troublemaker, someone who's busting rank, someone's breaking rank, and you probably will have an accident. So, you know, there's nobody really right now, until there's actually a special counsel or someone who's actually beginning to indict people or whatever. Until then, there's really no one that they can go to cut a deal. You know, Congress has the ability to grant some limited immunity for testimony on specific things, but Congress can't grant wide-ranging immunity from extremely high-level, you know, felonies, especially the type of felonies we're talking about. So there's really nobody for these people to go to. I have no doubt that maybe McCabe or Lisa Page or some of these people are waiting, or maybe Bruce Orr, waiting for an opportunity to cut a deal. But right now, there's nobody to cut a deal with. But at some point, the amount of evidence will be overwhelming, and some way, I don't know how it'll come about, but some way there will have to be an actual special counsel appointed to investigate this. And at that time, once people start feeling the heat, particularly when they get wind that indictments may be coming down, that is when you start seeing people come forward and try to cut deals. Just remember, you know, you don't want to be the second guy in line looking to cut a deal, because once you've got someone like a McCabe or a Strzok who knows everything, pretty much everything, or a Comey himself, or Yates or someone like that, there's no need for you.